Hello everyone, I'm Popo Gijo, and today we're going to be taking a look at how to drift. Alrighty guys, so in today's video we're going to be taking a look at how to drift. Disclaimer here, before we get started, I'm by no means a pro drifter. I have been playing this game for a long time. I recently switched, like maybe a little over a month ago, to the wheel. I do have a lot of knowledge in Forza Horizon games on drifting, but I am also a little bit newer myself to the wheel, so I feel like this is an appropriate video to make right now because I am freshly learning how to transition what I know on a controller to the wheel. So I figured I'd share with you guys what really helped me out and some of the tips that some of my drifting buddies have helped out. So in today's video, we're going to be covering the difference between drifting on a controller and the wheel. We're going to be taking a look at what assists you should be running and what camera views you could use. We're going to be figuring out what a good tune will roughly look like and how that can help your drifting. We're also going to be learning how to initiate a drift. We're going to learn how to hold a drift, and we're going to learn how to transition from a drift to a different drift. So that's basically what we're going to be covering in this video. If this is something you already know how to do, then this video isn't going to be for you. We are going to be doing future videos on how to do 360 entries, how to do reverse entries, 270 entries, and all sorts of tricks that are a little bit more technical for people that are already aware of how to do the basics. So let's jump right in. First off, guys, we're going to be covering the difference between drifting on the wheel and controller. So obviously on the controller, the two main inputs that you're going to be doing that are completely different on the wheel is your steering and your fuel control. On a controller, you can easily go from full lock left to full lock right in the matter of milliseconds, where on the wheel, it'll take you a lot longer, maybe even a second, to go from full lock. So you're going to have to focus on drifting with your throttle and your brake a lot more on the wheel, which is something you should already be doing on the controller. If you're drifting a controller, you really want to steer the car while drifting. You want to steer the car with your throttle and your brake to adjust your angle, and then just use the steering to hold that angle. Even if you are drifting like that on the controller already, it's a lot more important on the wheel. So that's the number one thing I would say to focus on at first, is focusing on your throttle control, brake control, and your clutch control. The next thing we're going to want to talk about is your assists, your wheel settings, and your camera views. So you're going to want to make sure you go into your settings, go to difficulty. Your braking, you can have anti-lock on. I personally like using ABS. You don't have to think as much about applying too much pressure or less pressure. You still have to focus on it, but a little less, because your wheels won't lock up, which is nice. It makes it a little bit smoother for tandems. You're absolutely going to want simulation steering if you're on a steering wheel. I ran simulation on controller and on steering wheel, so that wasn't a big deal for me. But just make sure you're on simulation, especially if you're on the steering wheel. You're obviously going to want your traction control off, stability control off, and preferably manual with clutch if possible. If you're just learning how to drift, or if you drifted with just manual without clutch on controller, moving to the wheel, you might want to learn without the clutch at first, but I highly suggest learning to play with the clutch. Now, wheel settings is going to be a lot of personal preference. For me, these are the settings I run. I'll show you guys real quick what I run. But just keep in mind that this is personal preference at the end of the day. So we're just going to skim through the settings quickly here, so you guys can, if you guys want, you can pause the video, take a screenshot, and match these settings. But I highly suggest learning what every individual setting does and adjusting the settings to your driving style. For me personally, it was a lot easier to learn how to drift in third person in this game. Once I got the feel for third person, then I was able to move into first person. But just for me personally, it was easier to learn in third person. A lot of people are like, a lot of sim drifters are gatekeepers, and they say that if you're not drifting on first person, you're not doing it right. And to me, that doesn't make sense. If you're playing a game, a single player game, and you're having fun, it shouldn't matter how you're doing it. As long as you're having fun, at the end of the day, that's all that should matter. Alright, so now you might be thinking, are we going to get to drifting? Not quite yet. There's one more important step that we need to take care of before we start drifting our cars or trucks, whatever you want to drift. Finding a good tune or building a good tune is going to be very important for drifting on the wheel. Wheel drifting is different than controller drifting. You really want to avoid bouncing off the rev limiter on the wheel. So having a good tune and having good your gears tuned properly is very important on the wheel. We're going to go more into not wanting to bounce off the rev limiter here in a bit. But here is a quick look at what I do for my tuning. It would be beneficial to search up how to tune a vehicle because it is very important to know how to tune your own cars. You don't have to, but it'll make your life a lot easier when you want to try a different car and you can't find a good tune. You won't have to worry about it. You can just make your own tune. So I strongly suggest watching some tuning videos, getting an in-depth idea of how to tune a car, and then you can tune your car the way you want. You won't have to rely on other people's tunes. Alrighty guys, so now we're getting into the good stuff. We're going to be learning how to initiate a drift. Now there's multiple ways to initiate a drift, from pulling the e-brake, from clutch kicking, from weight transfer, or from just powering into a drift. So for the purpose of this video, we're not going to be focusing on hitting the drift zones or clipping points. If you're trying to learn, don't just forget about the clipping points and just try and focus on maintaining drift, initiating drift. So for this step of the video, we're just going to focus on trying to initiate a drift. So we'll start off by doing just simply powering into a drift. So we're going to pick a gear that we know is good for drifting. We're going to slowly crawl up to the corner, and then we're going to power into it. And we're going to try and maintain drift. So for now, you're not going to want to worry too much about maintaining drift. You're just going to want to go up to the corner, power in, get it to kick out. So you have powering into your drift to start a drift. You also have clutch kicking. So here we'll do a clutch kick. So we're gonna rev the car out, let go of the clutch, and it's gonna kick out. Now, when you're doing this, you're gonna wanna steer slightly in the direction that you're turning, and as soon as the car starts sliding out, you're gonna wanna counter steer. So once again, we're full gas, clutch is in, we let go of the gas, turn the way we wanna turn, and then we counter steer. Alrighty, and now we also have weight transferring. So we're going to do a quick weight transfer here. We're going to turn the opposite way and then flick into the way we want to go into. Now, when we're doing this, we're also using the powering in, like just power through method, where you're applying a lot of throttle to get the car to kick out. The less power your car has, the more weight transfer you'll have to use to try and get the car to initiate. And then lastly, we'll have a e-brake initiation. So it's very straightforward. We're going to drive towards the corner. We're going to pull the e-brake. The back end's going to kick out. We counter steer and we're drifting. Now that we've learned how to initiate a drift, we're going to want to maintain a drift. First thing is throttle control is everything. You don't want to be bouncing off the rev limiter. You want to be in a good RPM where you have lots of power, but you want to try and avoid bouncing off that rev limiter. Reason being is that when you're bouncing off that rev limiter, you're limiting how much control of the car you have. You can't gain more angle by using the throttle if you're already bouncing off the rev limiter. You want to find a gear that you can stay in power but not be bouncing off the rev limiter, and just find that sweet spot where you can hold it and keep that angle going. So I'll give you guys an example here with a e-brake initiation. And there you have it. So if you guys notice, I wasn't bouncing off the rev limiter. I was keeping a steady RPM, and I was able to control the car very well. If you noticed as well, I was using left foot braking to kick myself out a little bit further when I needed more angle. So a good tune while drifting will mean that you will most likely have 100% brake bias to the front, which means that the back tires will always be able to rotate whether you're full lock on the brakes or not. The reason you want that is to give you extra angle like I just got doing that drift, or when you're running tandems, you can maintain a drift while slowing yourself down. Now I'm going to try and give you guys an example of what not to do and why you shouldn't be just bouncing off the rev limiter. So we're going to throw it back in third here, take off. We're going to do the exact same thing, but we're going to bounce off that rev limiter. As you guys could see, it was way harder to control the car like that. Reason being, all your steering is going to your steering wheel. And if you notice, I went full lock right away, but full lock wasn't enough. I did not have enough steering angle to hold it with that much power. So that is why you don't want to bounce off the rev limiter. Another reason that it's important not to bounce off the rev limiter is that you're limiting, like I was explaining earlier, how much angle you can get. If you're bouncing off that rev limiter, you have no way to get more angle without left foot braking or a lot of steering input, which you don't want to do. Left foot braking is fine, but it'll only take you so far when you're bouncing off the rev limiter. So keep in mind that you want to be in a gear that you won't be forced to bounce off the rev limiter whether it's a long corner, a short corner, whatever kind of corner it is. One last quick note before we move to the next segment of the video. Just try and think of the throttle and the brake as a way to help the car rotate around, and that the steering wheel is just holding you in that rotation so that you don't rotate all the way around and you can just maintain that angle. The steering wheel shouldn't be what gives you the angle, the throttle and the brake should be what gives you the angle, and the steering wheel should just be there to hold that angle. Hopefully that helps. Now that you know how to initiate a drift and you know how to maintain a drift, the next thing is going to be how to connect multiple drifts together, which is called a transition. When learning transitions, you're going to notice that it's a lot of throttle input. Once again, your throttle is your best friend when drifting. A big part of this is going to be practice, practice, practice. Learning transitions was one of the hardest things for me to learn on the wheel. So just try not to get discouraged. If you're getting discouraged, walk away, take a breather, take in what you've learned, and come back and try again. There's nothing wrong with that. You're way better off doing that than getting frustrated, trying the same thing over and over again. Your frustration is just going to make your driving worse. Just walk away for a bit. So when learning transitions, it's basically learning when to give throttle input and when not to give throttle input while you're transitioning. Big thing too is letting the car do the work for you, not throwing the wheel over, trying to avoid doing hand over hand, and just letting the car flow the way it naturally should. So I'm going to show you guys what not to do by giving too much throttle input while doing a transition here. We're going to initiate with an e-brake, hold our drift, get a little bit more angle with that left foot braking. Got a nice drift going. Now we're going to go to transition. Gave too much throttle. So what happens when you give too much throttle in a transition? You'll do a 360. And don't worry, you are going to be doing that a lot. It's normal. It's just going to take practice. Figure out when you have to let go of the throttle, when to give throttle input again. Sometimes you'll let go of the throttle for too long, your car will straighten out, and then you'll have to reinitiate. It just means you have to give a little bit more throttle input. If you're doing 360s, it's because you're not giving. It's because you're giving too much throttle input. So now I'm going to try and show you guys how I do my transitions. It doesn't necessarily make it wrong or right. It's just how I do it. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm by no means a pro. I have been drifting on controller since Forza Horizon 3. But I am fairly new to the wheel, so I'm learning just as much as you guys. I just want to share what helped me, and hopefully it can help you guys. So we're going to try again here. I'm going to try and show you guys what to do. I'm going to initiate, find that nice RPM, try and hold that RPM and that angle. There it is. Now we're going to let go for a split second and catch the throttle back. So you see how I let go right as I'm transitioning, and then I catch the car back with the throttle. Once again, that wasn't all that clean, but it was a transition. As you get better, you'll be able to transition into deeper angles without spinning out. That was a really shallow angle. So if you guys have noticed, I am letting go of the throttle, not fully, but for a brief second while I'm transitioning, and then catching the throttle back to keep the car in drift. If you don't catch the throttle at the right time, you'll lose your drift and you'll straighten out. So I'll give you guys one more example of what not to do here. So we initiate our drift, we're drifting, very, very not nice drift, but we're drifting. Now we're gonna go to transition, and we let go a little bit too much, and obviously the car straightened out, so you don't want to do that either. So it's a fine line of when to get back into when to let go of the power and when to try and get back into the power. And this is going to be one of those things that you just need to practice. You can only look at so many videos. At the end of the day, this is just something you really have to grind out, get a feel for it, get a feel of the car, and you'll eventually get it. And once it clicks, you'll have it forever, and you'll never forget how to do it, and you'll be so happy that you learned how to do it, because it feels amazing the first time that you fully connect a track. It's really, like, drifting on the controller is awesome as well, don't get me wrong, but the satisfaction you get of learning on the wheel because of that extra challenge, because of that a little bit more realism, it just feels great. Alrighty guys, and that's it. I want to end this video off by saying watching this video is not going to make you a great drifter. The best thing that you can do is take this information, get on the game and just practice, 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 right? It's not just going to come like that. This is going to be something that takes time. It's very difficult to drift in the first place. It's even harder to do it on the wheel. So don't expect it to happen overnight. Like I was saying earlier, if you have to walk away and, you know, come back in 5, 10, 15 minutes, that's fine. If you have to even, you know, sleep on it, sleep on the information that you've gotten, sleep on the mistakes that you've made, the next day you'll come back with a fresh mind, and it'll be a lot easier to implement all the stuff that you've learned. If you guys enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments if you guys want me to make any more tutorials on drifting. Like I could do a more in-depth video on how to utilize left foot braking. I do plan on making some stunting videos where, like, how to do reverse entries in Forza, how to do 360s, how to do 270s, and maybe some tandem tips. Whatever you guys are interested in, just let me know in the comments, and I'd be glad to help you guys out. I just like helping the community grow, helping the more drifters out there, the better, the more doors to catch, you know what I mean? Thanks for watching, guys, and happy sliding.